We begin with the latest in Russia and Ukraine peace talks. A three-day diplomatic marathon in Florida has ended without a breakthrough. Over the weekend, President Donald Trump publicly expressed frustration with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that the Ukrainian leader isn't ready to sign off on Washington's latest peace proposal. The president told reporters he's disappointed that Zelensky hadn't fully read the U.S.-backed peace proposal, and then added that Russia appears to be fine with the deal.
So we've been speaking to President Putin, and we've been speaking to Ukrainian leaders, including Zelensky, President Zelensky. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it. Russia, I guess, would rather have the whole country when you think of it.
And as usual, President Donald Trump continues to show favor towards the Kremlin, even though Moscow says it might be open to the plan, even though Putin himself still hasn't endorsed it. In fact, just last week, he dismissed parts of the proposal as unworkable, even after U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner traveled to Moscow in hopes of moving the negotiations forward. Those talks produced no visible shift in Russia's stance. Meanwhile, Ukrainian and American officials held extensive sessions through Saturday. Afterwards, the Ukrainian president himself said that the talks were constructive, but not easy.
Yesterday, we spoke with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I thank them for their readiness to work together 24/7. The American representatives know the basic Ukrainian positions. The conversation was constructive, although not easy.
As the negotiations were occurring, Ukraine faced yet another barrage of Russian drone and missile strikes, leaving critical infrastructure compromised from energy sites to rail networks. Thousands of households are now without heating or water. President Zelensky is in London today meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and French President Emmanuel Macron. The discussions are expected to focus on the ongoing peace plan. Now, key sticking points include territorial concessions and security guarantees for Kyiv. President Donald Trump initially embraced Putin, chastised Zelensky, and pushed aggressively for a deal. But frustration has continued to grow as efforts to sway Moscow, including a high-profile summit in Alaska, failed to yield progress. In recent weeks, the White House even sanctioned Russian oil firms in a bid to increase pressure, ratcheting up the tension on both sides as Donald Trump Jr. delivered a fiery speech at a Middle East conference, sharply criticizing Kyiv. He claimed Ukraine's wealthy elites have fled, leaving the peasant class to fight, and accused President Zelensky of prolonging the war to avoid losing an election.
Ukraine was a far more corrupt country than Russia, as designated by the United States prior to this war. But then, because of the war, and because he's one of the great marketers of all time, Zelensky became a borderline deity, especially to the left. He was beyond reproach. Years of corruption, years of graft and theft on a world stage that everyone in this room knew were happening, were totally absolved. It's ridiculous.
For now, the path forward remains uncertain. Even as the White House continues to push, Kyiv remains both vigilant and cautious, while Moscow signals resistance. And on the ground, the war continues to grind, with each strike, each meeting, and each statement shaping an unpredictable landscape.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shaped nations. They scarred generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power. Firstpost reveals their truth.